Without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Judy Kepher to come and give her presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Pal of Africa. I'm the first one to say that this morning. Yeah? Yeah, but I do recognize that I am in the Pal of Africa. Yeah? As soon as I landed, I knew where I was. Yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity. First and foremost, to all distinguished guests this morning. All invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to be here today. Is this on? To share some lessons that I have learned over the last 20 years, that there is a different way, sometimes a better way of doing tourism. Not that what we are doing is absolutely wrong, but I've come to learn over the years that it is possible to do tourism differently, so that tourism can be felt in the places where tourism happens. It should not just be felt in the bank accounts and in the central bank documentation, but it must translate in the lives of the people who live where tourism happens. If that doesn't happen, then we will experience in a little while what we have seen happen in some big European cities, where residents have put out banners saying, "Tourists, go away." I know when you talk about that in Africa, we're thinking, no, that day will never come. We will never say tourists go away because we are always chasing the numbers. But now we realize that people have other values, that life is not about profitability, and I will talk a little bit later about what I call thrivability, and why we need gross domestic purpose and not just gross domestic profit, because that makes the difference between us seeing ourselves as part of what is going on in the places that we call home. That's a little bit about who we are. So the best way I describe myself is that I am a possibilist when it comes to doing tourism differently. I believe it is possible, and that's my tourism identity. Earlier on, we were asked by the CEO to introduce ourselves using coffee. Yep, but when it comes to tourism, I say I am a possibilist, and I believe that tourism can be done better for destinations. It just takes us to think differently about tourism. So that's what my organization does in tourism. We can talk about that later. Can I get some next slide? Yeah, so this is my famous quote in tourism, that this is where it should all begin, that great places to visit. Whether we are designing coffee tourism, wildlife tourism, whitewater rafting, gorilla tracking, we should know that the great places to visit must first and foremost be amazing places for host communities to live in. Because ultimately, they are the providers of the experience. The experience is not designed by Uganda Tourist Board, or is not designed by Let's Go Travel. It's not designed by any other tour operator. The experience, what you sell today, has been created by the people who have lived in these places, who have interacted with these resources so that today you can use them, these same resources, and package them. So all that you are doing is packaging an experience that belongs to the resident, what I call the host communities. They are the owners of the experience. And for a long time, tourism has excluded them. We have packaged their experiences and then pushed them aside and told them that, you know what, you're not good enough. We will package it and we will bring other people. So what have we ended up with? I had this conversation last evening, and I love to have it. We have ended up selling things instead of selling experiences, because you cannot sell an experience when you have excluded the people who create the experience. You end up selling attractions and you end up selling things, and you cannot even be creative around it. So we have this copy and paste problem of East Africa, where every other safari looks like the other one. Yeah, because we are packaging offers and excluding the people in the experience. If we were to include them, we will be very, very different, and we will be authentic. A safari in Tanzania wouldn't be like a safari in Kenya. Today it's exactly the same. It's just that you're in a different geographic space. Yeah, what you do in a lot of these places. Next. So I will quickly go through a few things that we have learned over the years. Like I said, 20 years ago, I came face to face with the reality of what host communities perceive tourism to be. At that time, I worked for the Kenya Wildlife Service. And the problems of human-wildlife conflict around our national parks and reserves, which were never created to include the experiences of the local people. That problem was huge, and every so often there was a delegation coming to see the director of Kenya Wildlife Service, because they were losing livelihoods, they were losing property. But all the time, we never thought that the solution was in integrating them. We thought that the solution was, now we need to put an electric fence on this side. Yeah. Now we need to move them a little farther away. Yeah. The problem was always them. So I happened to work in the tourism department, and this bothered me quite a bit. How come these people are not part of tourism? So when we quote figures, in Uganda you're at 1.4 billion, I think in Kenya we are talking 1.9 or 2 billion. What does it mean for the resident of Masai Mara, the landowner of Masai Mara? Does that figure mean anything to him? I started asking myself, there must be. These people cannot be the problem. Because in the department where I was working, we were being told, you have to find a way of dealing with them and making them respect wildlife. That was the message, yeah? Make them respect wildlife. And I sat there and I asked myself, if they did not respect wildlife, would we be having these national parks today? They have lived with this wildlife. They respect it. If you look at most of our folklores and stories in some of these places, you find that wildlife, it was always attached. The stories always, the relationship with people and wildlife was like, some of it was something you did not have to, you had to stay away from it. If you listen to folklores about, the cheetah and the hyena in the community that I came from, you don't even want to see one or touch one. So there were folklores and cultures that enabled people to respect nature and live with nature. You know, you can eat that, you can't kill that. If you do this, this will happen to you. And that is how we protected our wildlife. So we knew how to live with nature. How come now we want to build fences to say they don't understand, make them respect? Yeah? So there was a complete shift in mindset for me. And we organized we organized the first ecotourism conference, I think, in Africa, while I worked for Kenya Wildlife Service. And most of our speakers came from South America, together with the International Ecotourism Society. And they spoke about this new form of tourism that can benefit host communities. And over the years, I know the attributes and the principles have been defined and redefined. But at the end of the day, it tells us that the only future that tourism has is to integrate host communities. Because if we don't have them, we don't have those experiences. If we keep them away from wildlife, they become enemies of the wildlife. They kill the wildlife. Or they have more conflict with the wildlife, and soon we will not have a wildlife experience. So the only future that tourism had is to integrate communities. And so I started on a journey to see how will tourism in Kenya integrate and recognize host communities. How do we make them be part of that experience and the deliverer of the experience? So the realization was that tourism policies, most of the time, whether they're our marketing strategies, whether it is how we package tourism, they create disabling environments for communities to engage. So it is not that the communities can't engage, but how we have designed tourism creates disabling environments so that host communities cannot engage in tourism. So the turnaround is, how can we create enabling environments so that communities become part of the experience, become owners of the experience, they become our hosts, and then together we end up with a thriving industry, not just a profitable industry. We end up with a thriving industry where everybody feels at home and the host communities feel like the places that they live in are great places to visit. Next slide, please. So I want to look at a few metrics, because the problem with tourism starts with the metrics of how it is measured, but also I want us to understand that values have changed over time. So you can't get stuck in one way of defining competitiveness in tourism today. Yeah? Your competitiveness in tourism is not the number of international brands that you bring to your destination. Your competitiveness today is more about, are you responding to the global values and the global mood? Because it's no longer what you want to offer or what you can offer. It's also about how you offer and what your market wants. And the traveler, people are growing to be more and more conscious today, so they are defining what they want. So let's look at these two very important global concepts that we know today, especially the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a benchmark index. If you don't know how to measure your tourism, please use the SDGs. So you just don't measure profitability, you measure thrivability of your destination. Because when your tourism is responding to the Sustainable Development Goals, then you're building a holistic destination that is good for the people to live in and is good for the visitor to come to as well. So if you look at every so often, there is an index that is used, it's called the dashboard, yeah? The Sdg Index, that is used to measure country responses to the SDGs. Now, these are the top countries when it comes to the Sustainable Development Goals. But they also have tourism, right? But they are measured on a more holistic approach and index, which is about improving life in general, not just growing a particular sector independently without looking at how it improves life in general. Next. Then we've got the Travel and Tourism Competitiveness Report, right? Which looks at how different destinations are performing. It is still anchored a lot on numbers, And that's why you see these two places come up, yeah? Spain and France. It's anchored on numbers and a number of other things, but interestingly, these are the two places that have the worst cases of over-tourism and visitors rejecting tourism. But what does our tourism competitive index say? They are number one. They are in the top. So this is sometimes the fallacy. That's why we say the tourism figures can be very destructive to our minds, that we can forget that tourism should be a tool for development. It should not be just an income generating element. Can we do the next one? So here we measure, we just compare, and that's why we say there is a total mismatch. If the SDGs are our global values today, because they encompass, the SDG encompass every possible human right that you can think about, there's 17 of them, and a progressive destination, today I say that a progressive destination should be able to say that in our tourism strategy for the next 5 or 10 years, we will look at tourism addressing these 3 or 5 SDGs. Not just saying this, we will look at tourism growing the numbers and increasing the figures, yeah? That's a progressive tourism strategy. So this mismatch is worrying and should be worrying for those of us who are in tourism. Now, if you look at, there is 0 countries listed in the top competitive tourism destinations that appear in the Sdg Index. 0 countries listed as the top 5 in the Travel and Tourism Competitive Index. None of them appear in the top 5 of the Sdg Index. And then we say that tourism is contributing to development. How? If there's that mismatch, it means that it has not been connected. And when we look at we move on to the next step, which is the top 10 in SDG, only 2 countries listed in the top 10 in tourism appear in the Sdg Index, and I think that is Sweden and another country. And you move on and increase the bracket up to the top 20 in SDG, and now you find 6 countries in those top 20 in Travel and Tourism Index appear in the 20 list of SDGs. There is a complete disconnect. And what we are saying is that if we have a global value, isn't it just right that every economic sector should be able to match out its achievement against those global values? So tourism is still far from realizing or contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. Next. But here's the reality. Why tourism cannot continue to stay in that space where it is not clear that it stands for the Sustainable Development Goals. Here is the reality, and I think this is a very reliable source. Booking.com, one of the top booking sites in the world. They meet all sorts of travelers who come, millions of travelers visit their site every single day, millions, to look for a holiday package. And they did a survey in 2018, this I think was May this year, to see what people are looking for, where travelers are going on their site and what they're looking for. 87% of people who go to booking.com seek a sustainable travel. 87% are looking for a sustainable travel. And we are marketing our destinations today, and the word sustainability, or even the feel of sustainability, doesn't appear anywhere. Then we start wondering why the numbers are growing in some places and they're not growing in others. And we had this interesting discussion about Rwanda and how Rwanda has grown its tourism, because Rwanda is a value-based destination. It's not an attraction-based destination. They built a value, they built an identity of being a progressive, sustainable, green destination. Then when their identity was very clear in the world, then it doesn't matter. Whatever little that they have, the travelers will find them there in the 87%. That's why they are today Africa's top green destination, right? If you look at green destinations listing, Rwanda is on top. as Africa's greenest destination. In that index, where we're looking at adding environment and other things to competitiveness of a destination, I think Kenya is number 4. We've got Rwanda, we've got Namibia, we've got Botswana, and we've got Kenya. And the only reason we moved up that rank in Kenya is because we managed to deal with our challenge of poaching. Namibia used to be on top, but Namibia is today facing a challenge of logging, and they dropped in that competitive index. And so people would that tells you that there's something about values that is driving people in travel. So even as a destination, you must know what you stand for. What do people know you for? Yes, we're good for wildlife. Yes, we're good for coffee. Yes, we're good for whitewater rafting. But what are our values as a destination? What do we care for? Do we care for people, and are we able to show it? So when Rwanda increased its the gorilla permits, have they lost their numbers? Have they lost their revenue? No, they haven't, because people continued to respond to it and say they're doing that because it's in line with their values. So while some of us were thinking it's a revenue agenda, it wasn't a revenue agenda. It was an agenda to strengthen identity. So they will tell people, you know, we are doing this because we are protecting the gorillas. We don't want over-visitation. We don't want over-tourism to happen. And they sold out to the world, so they're still able to sell out their permits because they're selling a value. They're not selling things, and they're not selling places. So all these statistics show us that there is tremendous demand for value-driven travel. Another 68% want to stay in an eco-facility. What does that mean? It means you have to give them a verified product to show them that it is actually an eco-facility. And that has seen the growth of sustainability certification in the world. So sustainability certification is no longer optional. It is something that every serious destination must start thinking about. How do we give this 68% a guarantee, a verified product that actually those who intend to stay in an eco-facility can say that, how do I find an eco-facility in Uganda? Because it's no longer about what you say about your product. Yeah? People are looking for third-party verification. Has somebody else said you are? And who was that who said you are actually eco in the things that you do? So you can put as much eco in front of all your buildings and names and all those kind of things. But if travelers know that there is verification that exists in the market, that is the verification that they will be looking for. So if you want to reach out to that 68%, they're looking for eco-facility. What does it tell you? They are value-based travelers. Yeah? They are not looking to sleep in your good bed. They love your good bed, thank you. But what is it that they will talk about your places when they come? They will talk about how it connected with their values. I travel to connect with places, and I know that most conscious travelers travel to connect with people and then the places that they have that they are visiting. So when I come to Uganda, I first want to connect with the people. And so I go out to a place where I will connect with the people. And my way of connecting is to go and find where I can eat local food. So I have a beautiful bed, but if you follow me on social media, I have not written about my beautiful bed. I have not posted anything about my beautiful bed, but I have posted about matoke and fish. Because that is Uganda. That is what Uganda is, isn't it? I have connected with Uganda because matoke and fish is part of what their identity is. So people travel to connect, and people are looking for values that they identify with. We must be able to provide them with those values. And even as I mention all these things, let's think about them so that when we go into the discussions, we'll be saying, so how can we design our coffee tourism? Because it's been here, you just want to now design it and put it together and put it in the place where it belongs in the world today. It's not just about coffee. In the world, it belongs to the gastronomy concept. That's what, how will you expand the coffee within the gastronomy travel that has become a very big part of how people choose their travels today? How does it become part of that so that we can be able to put these values together? I want to jump very quickly. This 40% is about those people who are looking, when they're booking through booking.com, they want to make sure that they reduce their environmental impact, their footprint, their negative ecological footprint. Are you able to show them that as you design your products today, that if they come and consume coffee tourism in Uganda, their footprint in that place will actually be reduced and managed? Am I eating into Glenn's time? Just put up something, because I am one of those ones who don't stop. Huh? Yeah. So the other one is that people are looking for authentic experiences. If they're experiencing coffee tourism in Costa Rica, when they come to Uganda, they don't want you to replicate coffee tourism in Costa Rica. So when you go for benchmarking, please don't go and copy-paste. Find out what the values are, yeah? And come and replicate the values, but make it authentic Ugandan, okay? So there are people who actually, 34% of these travelers mention authentic experiences as part of what they're looking for. Now the sad reality from booking.com is this one, the last bit of this chart, that only out of those 87%, only 10% manage to travel responsibly. Because there are few, and maybe if they are there, we don't even know how to communicate it. So only 10% manage to find exactly what they're looking for, especially these four things. Only 10%. Another 32% wrote back and said they lack information and credible processes. And this becomes a significant obstacle to sustainable travel. They lack information. They don't know what you're doing. It has not been verified. You remember I said certification is no longer an option in today's value-based travel, because somebody wants to know that you've actually checked something. Next slide. This is more statistics, but I will not go into this. This was just another study from 2015. It just tells you that the trend is the same. It continues to be a value-based industry. And out of a good number of the 66% of travelers, are willing to pay more for sustainable brands. And that was in 2015. Just in 1 year, it had grown by almost what? 15%? They're willing to pay more for a sustainable brand. And that's why I want to go straight into highlights of what a sustainable brand would look like. Can we do the next slide? So that I can move faster. Just a good reminder, and this is a quote from 2013, but I think it is still very true. Tourism in the 21st century will be sustainable, or it simply won't be at all. That was said by Costa Rica Director of Tourism in 2013. It will have to be sustainable, or it will not be at all. There's just one option that is left for tourism. Can we move to the next one? Next. So here are some of the things that we need to do to make our brand's tourism truly sustainable, so that 87% that is looking for this experience can find it. Now we've got to design tourism. We've got to design those products. We don't have to have attractions and then design packages. We must design the experiences around our packages. And when we design, we're looking at value and we're looking at purpose. My colleague and I have always tried to explain the difference between design and plan. And that's why we don't like to use the word plan, because we think that plan is a little bit more outward looking. When you design, we believe you start with what you have and look at what it can do for you. When you plan, you assume and imagine many things. And we are saying in this age of value-driven tourism, do not just plan, design. So you have to look at everything that is around you. So if it is coffee-based tourism, you will have to look at who can get engaged on the ground, what can they offer. So we're not just planning, we want to bring more people to come and enjoy coffee tourism. But you start by saying, who is the basis of this coffee tourism? So you start designing together with them. So what is the purpose? This is a question you ask yourself. Why do we want to do this so badly? Is it because we want to diversify? Is it because we want to increase our numbers? Is it what is on top of that chain? Is it because we want to transform how tourism works with people? That purpose has got to come out very clearly. And this just shows us that we have a benchmark, and I already talked about the SDGs. We have a benchmark, which is divided into people. If you look at the SDGs, those who are familiar with them, we know that there are people SDGs, there are planet SDGs, prosperity SDGs, and just one on partnership. So when you are designing a truly sustainable tourism brand, it must be able to respond to people's needs, planet, prosperity in destinations, and build strong synergies between travelers and the communities where they visit. Next. When you design a truly sustainable brand, the experience around that brand must be diverse. And it takes me back to my example of wildlife safari. The experience around wildlife today is sit in your vehicle and go around and see it, and it will be pointed out at you. So there is absolutely no alternative. There is no diversity in how you interact with wildlife tourism today. But if we want to add more value, we must be able to create diversity around every product, so that if I can test coffee, I can sleep in one of the homes, I can grind and practically work with the women around that coffee. I can see the heritage behind that coffee. So it's not like, let's go and test it and go away and go through a farm visit. How are we going to make it diverse so that people can feel immersed in the places that they visit? Because immersion is one of the things that people are looking for. Yeah? How will we design our coffee tourism to ensure that we bring in diversity to make those who come to visit immerse in their tourism? I have been on a few of the wine tours in Cape Town, and every time they try to make it different. You go on a wine tour, sorry, not coffee, wine tour. You go on a wine tour, there's the standard. There's some things that are standard. It's like having tissue paper in your toilet, yeah? In a hotel. You don't have to tell anybody you have that, yeah? So I know that if I'm coming for a coffee tour or a wine tour, it is obvious that I will do the walk, right? I will do the walk and I will do the, so what else? Because then I come once and I don't need to come back. But you can always go back, because this time you will have a wine tour and it will be combined with a jazz festival. So even if you've been there, you're like, okay, it's a wine tour with a jazz festival. So I can do it again. And it's not just a wine tour with a jazz festival. Now it is a wine tour with a jazz festival from jazzists in the township. We are integrating local people. There is always something around it that makes it different. And when it is promoted all the time, you feel like it is a different experience this time. It's a different experience this time. And that is what we mean by diversity. And when we have diversity, we create value for many people. It's not confined to the tour operator and the hotel, because that's what the safari business is today. Yeah? It's the destination, the national park, the tour operator, and the lodge. The trickle is very, very low. Can we do the next one? I'm not going to repeat this. I talked about resource efficient. People have values, and those values have to do with the global issues that are affecting the world today. So even as you design your initiative, this is a sad story. These two pictures it's sad. In some place there's a child in Africa who is waiting to die, right? The circumstances notwithstanding, that same continent wastes 40% of the tourism industry. 40% of food waste comes from hotels and tourism. 40% of our food waste comes from this industry that we are in, those of us who are seated around. And the world is hungry. Why? Because we have weird ideas about what luxury is and how we offer luxury. We define luxury in very, very weird ways, that it's got to be excessive. Everything must be excessive. As somebody told me that the amount of food that is put out for you in any buffet, for one person, it's almost like they put what, 12 to 18 kilos, 12 of different little foods. That is why we have a lot of food left behind. Now, who eats that amount of food in a sitting? But because there was a training that was inherited, and everybody, every F&B and every chef inherited it, we just continue traditions without stopping to ask ourselves questions. So if we are designing truly sustainable experiences, we must make sure, ask ourselves questions of efficiency every now and then. Can I do the next one? Then we must be ethical in our relationships with the destinations. We can't have 10 facilities in a place that is water scarce, offering Olympic-sized swimming pools, and the children in that village are drinking water from the mud pools. Tourism must be ethical. And you know, sometimes we think that our visitors don't see these things. And we have taught our tour guides to answer questions in particular way, but the travelers are not stupid. If I have values, I have values. It doesn't matter how you try to tell me and explain the situation away. And I'm not saying that tourism has the responsibility of doing the work of government, but tourism has to be ethical. If I operate in a water scarce area, as part of policy makers should be able to say that if you want to do tourism in this area where there is water scarcity, we do not allow you to build swimming pools. It starts with us. The investor wants to do this, but if we have values as destinations ourselves, we'll say, okay, you want to do tourism in Turkana? No, you can't put a swimming pool because it's a water scarce area. And we know that swimming pools take a lot of water. You'll have to be backwashing and throwing that water all the time. And yet another kid next door, not too far away from where your camp is, has got to drink water from a mud pool. It can't be about the numbers anymore. It has to be about ethics as well. Then we build value-based destinations that are truly sustainable. Next one. Now the experiences have got to be authentic. I think I said that from the booking.com slide. Truly sustainable experiences have got to be authentic. Let's go to the people and spread the benefits of tourism. Let's stop exporting cultures to every place. I recently got into trouble with the tourism industry in Kenya because I said we must bring to a stop this thing of carrying communities to go and dance at the airports and say that it was African culture to go and dance for people. And I asked one hotel manager, you are also a Kenyan with a culture, right? If I told you to now change and run to the airport to go and welcome visitors with a dance, would you go? He said, of course I would. So why do you think that because those people are vulnerable, we can always take them there? Why don't we dignify culture and let people go and experience authentic culture where the people feel we can put some dignity in it. If I can't do it, why should I want you to do it? Yep. It's misused, and that's why we have not been able to package our culture properly and get value out of it. In as much as people would have issues with the Reed Festival in Swaziland, why do they get so many visitors for that festival? Yeah, they know that it is wrong that the king is choosing a wife every year. But the festival is authentic. They will not stage manage it for you, will they? You have to follow it, you have to book it, and you have to be there when it is happening. We are not recreating it and stage managing it for you. But we are doing a lot of these things, and we are actually killing our culture. We've got a lot of stage managed culture, and the worst thing for me is that it does not bring dignity to that community, to those people who are told to do this thing. So when I questioned, I said, please stop sending communities to the airport and pretend and tell those guests that it is always our culture. I know it, we are very, very welcoming people in Africa. But even when I asked my mother, did you guys, were you always dancing when visitors come? I said, no. So where is this thing that we found out that Africans dance for tourists when visitors come? If the tourists come to the village and it is dancing time, for whatever reason we're dancing, let's dance with them. But let's go and find people where they are so that they can also begin to appreciate tourism. Make it authentic. This is what you see in Masai Mara almost all the time. Oh, sorry, we already moved. Where you bring people instead of engaging people. We cannot finish talking about sustainable products without talking about quality, because it is very, very important. There are certain things, like I said, that are basic, that needs to enhance the experience, but they are not at the core of the experience. And that's why I always use the bed. The bed is not the core of the experience of the traveler. It helps them to go through the experience that they have bought. So where they sleep, it's just to help them explore the place. It is not the experience in itself. Yeah? Food has become an experience today, but the bed is not an experience. Yeah? Wi-Fi is not an experience, we need it. So when our hotel writes that in my information in the room, we offer free Wi-Fi. I'm like, really? So what? It's it's not the experience itself. And recently, there was some discussion online, for those of you who are keen, about a hotel in Switzerland that decided that it's going to have Instagram seaters. It's called Insta seaters. So that when you come and you've taken your photos and you want to really post awesome photos, these young people will help you to do that. And it was rejected. The experience is mine. When somebody else posts it for me, now what was that hotel thinking? It's the same ones who tell you we offer free Wi-Fi and DSTV as part of your experience in our hotel. So let's look at what is quality, what really quality means. Yeah? It doesn't mean some of those things that we pay attention to. Now, we did a study, very interesting, to tell you that the things that we think are quality might not be exactly what the traveler wants. We did a study to look at Kenya's eco-certified, because in Kenya we've got, in 2004, I was involved in designing Kenya's first certification program for sustainability. It's called the Eco Rating Scheme, with silver, bronze, silver, and gold certification. So we did in 2016, we looked at TripAdvisor reviews for those who had visited eco-certified places and those who had visited other places in Masai Mara. And 90% of the comments on people who had visited eco-certified places were about people and planet. We loved we loved it that our guides and hosts were local Maasai. We loved it that this lodge is contributing to wildlife conservation. We felt that our income is shared with the community. They did not say that the bed was excellent. And that's why we talk about the values, things that people care for. So that 87% in that booking.com study, that is what they will write about. So look again, look at quality, yes, but offer value and experiences more than you offer. And the last one. So we also need a product that educates and interprets, and this is what some people have called the sense of place, promoting a sense of place. Let me connect with the places that I visit. Let me know a little bit about them. Let me hear the stories of the places that I visited. And when I was hearing some stories about the coffee farms, I said, what a beautiful place for education and interpretation about coffee and brotherhood and heritage and all this kind of thing. So we need products that can interpret places. So when I find that you are in Uganda and you are selling Kenyan Maasai beads in your So, but does it mean that there is, what is in Uganda is not attractive enough, even if we are East Africa? Integration? Maybe. maybe it's part of the integration. But knowing that what I find in a certain place, I can learn about it and it can be integrated. And that's why I say people travel to connect to places and people travel to reaffirm their values, right? As they connect to those places. So let's have products that are communicative. Let's have good information about the places, not just the basic information that we want people to hear about. Some of the most successful traditional craft businesses in Africa in tourism are the ones that tell the story of the place. And from 2007, I got involved with a project to redesign the Maasai beadwork with women in Masai Mara. If you go online, you'll find a product called the Basecamp Maasai brand. Today, the Basecamp Maasai brand is not a gift item, because that's where culture starts and all these things, yeah? It's not a gift item that people buy something, oh, I just want to buy because the women are selling, I'll go and keep it at home or I'll give it to someone. It has made its way to the fashion runways. Why? Because it is authentic to the place and its interpretation has been great. It has received a lot of CSR support from companies in Europe who say, we want to identify with that brand. And because of that, it has built an identity for the tourism lodge that enabled the community to be able to educate and interpret their culture. And then worked with the designers to make it relevant for the rest of the world. So it's a relevant item for the rest of the world. So education and interpretation just doesn't enhance the value, but I think it also creates loyalty to a destination when they can identify specific things with places. Right? Next. I am done. Almost done. So those are the 7 attributes of a truly sustainable brand. But what we say is that destinations and brands that ignore sustainable tourism will scramble for the bottom piece of the tourism pie. You'll be scrambling for the 13%. And how much can you get out of 13% from the world? That is the space. You can't compete in the 87%. You are left to scramble for the 13%. And that is why you will end up having price wars. You'll still be thinking it's about price and it's about numbers. But if we move it a little higher, we go to the 87%, and so we are not scrambling, we are sharing the pie on the table, not what has fallen out of the table. Do I have one more slide? Yep. The world shareholders, suppliers, and consumers are on the watch for brands with a conscience. So people are watching, people are aware. Yeah, don't ever assume that they don't know, that they will consume what you are offering them. They will consume what they identify with at whatever price. They will consume it. So, finally, that's the last one. We must end tourism as we know it and redefine a new path for our tourism. Then we will integrate our communities, then we will transform our destinations, then we will transform our people, and then we will become thriving destinations. Thriving destinations, because the people will be thriving, the planet will be thriving, the businesses will be thriving. Thank you very much, ladies.